In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your serpentine belt tensioner on this Toyota Corolla. Let's get started. To start, we have to remove the engine cover, for which you can use a 10mm socket and remove the two mounting nuts. This one came off with the stud. That's fine. That happens sometimes. Just pull the engine cover up and out. Now with the engine cover off, let's move over to the passenger side of the engine. That is your tensioner right there. So put a 19mm socket on this hex cutout here. This is going to allow you to release tension off of the belt, apply constant downward pressure. This is a hydraulic tensioner, so it's not spring-loaded. And once you apply that pressure, slip the belt off of any pulley that you can easily reach. I'm just going to take it off the alternator here and then release your tool. It'll spring back immediately, and then you can remove the tool. With your tool removed, you can remove the belt completely. There's your belt. Now don't be alarmed about the routing of the belt. I'm going to provide you with a diagram on the screen when it comes time to reinstallation. At the top over here, you'll see a 12mm nut holding the top of the tensioner in place. Get your socket on here and remove that nut. You might have to pull this hose out of your way just a little bit. You can also use a wrench if you don't have a swivel head ratchet. Okay, once you break it free, it should come off pretty easily. Now all we're left with is this 17mm bolt that holds the tensioner onto the engine block. And unfortunately, the only thing you can fit here is going to be a wrench because of the space between the frame rail and the bolt. Hopefully you have a long enough wrench with some leverage. Oh, that one is definitely very tight. If you have a ratcheting wrench, that'll come in handy at this point. Just make sure you don't get it stuck between the bolt and the frame rail. At this point, we actually have to unbolt this engine mount off of the frame so we can jack up the engine to finish removing that bolt. So we have to unbolt three 14mm bolts. There's one on the back side right here that you can't really see, but it looks just like this one, just on the back side. So put your 14mm socket on there and remove the bolts. Now I'm going to roll my jack underneath and jack up the engine a little bit. I'm going to go right here on this corner of the oil pan. The reason I want to do that is because in the middle, it's going to have a much higher risk of actually caving in and bending. I also have this rubber pad here that'll help soften up and cushion the pressure. All I want to do is lift it up a little bit, enough to clear that bolt at the top. As I jack up the engine, I'm going to watch the bolt. And as soon as it clears, I'm going to stop because I don't want to go past what I need to go. Right about there should be good. Let's finish unthreading it. And there it is. Take this bolt out. Now pull the tensioner off of that stud at the top. And we're just going to have to find the right angle to fish it out. And that is most likely going to be straight out the top. Sure you clear all these lines without breaking anything. Okay, and there you have it. There's the tensioner. Let's take the new tensioner and slide it down into position. Once you get it close, try to line it up with this stud over here in the back. Okay, and now this will pivot. And you can line it up with the main bolt hole, just like that. Now let's put the bolt in. Slide the bolt through. And the only way to actually line it up at this point is to just move it around until you feel it fall into place. Just like that. Perfect. And now we have to thread it in by hand a few threads. in order to be able to lower the engine, because as you can see, there's some interference here. Make sure it doesn't cross thread, of course, which is also the advantage of having to start it by hand. You know that the threads are going to be good. I'm going to use my ratcheting wrench and drive it in the rest of the way. The torque for this main bolt is going to be 51 foot-pounds if you can get a torque wrench in there. If for some reason you can't, just make sure it's nice and tight. That's 51 and 21 for this smaller nut here, so let's put that one back. That's 21 for this one. Now lower the engine slowly and make sure that the engine mount lines up with all 3 bolt holes. I'm going to keep going down a little bit. As I set it down, you'll see the holes aren't perfectly lined up, so to get that lined up, I'm just going to grab it and pull it forward. This front one lines up perfectly, so I'm going to put that one in first. I'm not going to tighten it down, but I do want to thread it in so that I know that it's seated. Okay, so that one's in a little bit. Let's move on to the next one, which is the top one. Once you get this one to line up, start it in by hand. There we go. This one starts in 2. Again, not going to bottom it out. Just going to get it started about halfway. And now let's move on to the rear one, because that'll be the last one before we can tighten all these. Last one lines up. So start it. Might have to pull the motor mount a little bit, move it around. There we go. That's it. All right, I'm going to tighten this one up. Get it close. Tighten up this top one. Get that one close. And now we'll release the jack. This front one will settle, and we can tighten this one too. Now let's torque them. 38 foot-pounds is the torque for all 3 of these. The order in which you torque them doesn't matter as long as they're all tight. Now let's put the belt on. Here's a diagram of the routing of the belt. It's pretty simple. I'm going to start by putting it on the harmonic balancer and AC pulleys at the same time. Slide that over like that. Looks like it fell in the groove on both of them. That's fine. Then I'm going to put it around the serpentine belt tensioner. And then from the tensioner, it's actually going to go back onto the power steering pump, which is underneath the tensioner assembly. See if you can reach it from behind the engine. There we go. That just slipped on perfectly. From the power steering pump pulley, has to cross over to the alternator and then put it under the alternator and over the water pump. Now I'm going to take it off of the alternator because it's on the tensioner. So I have to remove tension off the belt in order to get it on all the pulleys, of course. So at this point, I'm going to double check it quick. It looks like it's all set in all of the grooves. It's not off of any ribs. So let's grab our 19mm socket, remove tension off the tensioner. That should give you just enough slack to slip the belt over. Make sure it's still on all the pulleys. Let go of it. I like to usually release tension one last time, just a little bit, enough to double check the pulleys, maybe give it a quick spin. There we go. That's all set everywhere. Remove your tool. With your tool removed, inspect the belt once again. You definitely don't want this to be off of any ribs. If it is, it will just start destroying itself as it spins because it's basically going to get cut. So it looks good. Of course, you should also double check it after you run the vehicle for a little bit. But there you have it. It's on. Let's put the engine cover back. Now let's just put the engine cover right back. Make sure it lines up with both of the studs and put the mounting nuts back on. Tighten it up. There you go. Take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.